Now on AM 940, Montreal's Greatest Hits presents the VIP Business Talk Show with Don Emilio Zino.
Hello, Montreal, and welcome to another special segment of the VIP Business Talk Show. This is Don Emilio Zino, your host, and he shoots and we score. Tonight we have our VIP guest, Canada's greatest living sports legend and ambassador to the world, Mr. JEAN BELIVEAU. Monsieur Béliveau, how are you?
I'm not too bad, sir.
I'm telling you, Mr. Béliveau, I can't believe I'm doing this, and I want my listeners to know how we met, if with your permission, of course.
Oh, you go right ahead.
Thank you. I was invited by my friends from Schwartz's, Murray Diamond and High Diamond owners of Schwartz's about 8 months ago. And when I walked in, I saw from far Mr. Béliveau with his lovely wife, Mrs. Béliveau, and I said, oh, my God, this is a childhood dream for me. And because I want to confess, Mr. Béliveau, when my dad was alive many, many years ago in the 60s, we were always in front of the TV. In those days, we had a black and white TV with 4 channels, Radio-Canada, and there you were, larger than life, playing with all those old players at the time. I call them old, but they were very, very, very young and fast, too, you know, like John Ferguson and Henri Richard, which I met last year with Yvan Cournoyer. And there you were. And my God, and here I am, 8 months later, I finally did it. And folks, I want to tell you, being tenacious, being patient does pay off, because when I called you Mr. Béliveau, of course, you're a very, very busy and popular man, always in demand, all over the place, all over the world. And I said, Mr. Béliveau, would you give me the honor of interviewing you? And he says, well, keep calling me, and we'll see if we can find the time. Here we are, 8 months later, and I want to thank you immensely on a personal, and of course, our listeners are very, gratifying for you to be here. Mr. Béliveau, the kind of interview that I want to do right now is not so much about, your hockey days. I mean, we're going to start with that, but I want to know who Mr. JEAN BELIVEAU is as a businessman, as an ambassador, as a family man. What have you been doing once you got off the ice lately in the last many years? That's where the interview is going to drive itself. Are we okay with that, Mr. Béliveau?
I'm fine with that.
All right, let me dive in, and I hope my limited knowledge of hockey is going to do me well. I know that when you first, many years ago, you did not want to play for the Montreal Canadiens. Could you tell us why?
Well, it's not exactly. Here's the situation. My first year in affiliated hockey was 1948 for my hometown, Victoriaville.
Right. And
they operate that franchise for 1 year. I was 17 years old. So I could have come to Montreal right away in the spring of 49 because the team couldn't operate, not only financially, but I think on the ice. But I decided to go to Quebec. I was... Quebec Citadels at the time, 1949, had a general manager called Roland Mercier, and he always been in touch with me. The team was owned by the Burns family, who were in the pulp company business, and I decided to go to Quebec. And finally, I played my last 2 junior year for the Quebec Citadels. And again, Canadian, in the meantime, was always, in contact with me, offering me a contract to go play even as a junior. But I decided, and the only reason I decided to play for the Quebec Aces of the Quebec Senior League, and don't forget of all those minor league were very strong because there were only 6 teams in the NHL.
Yeah, the good old days. Tell me about it.
It was easier for the fans to follow us. No helmet and and 6 teams. But so I remember after my last year junior, met my future wife, and we're having dinner that night with Mr. Mercier. And I said, what can I do to show the population of Quebec City that I appreciated the way they treated me? And finally, that's when I decided to accept an offer from the Quebec Aces, and the coach, those of that era will remember, was Pun Chimlak. And I decided my way of thank the population was to play 1 year with the Aces, finally end up playing 2 years. And but my dream always been since a young boy to play for Canadian, wear the bleu, blanc, rouge uniform. And that's why we got married in the summer of 53, and we moved to Montreal.
First of all, from what I remember and what I've read, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Béliveau, you had signed a contract with Les Canadiens for $100,000 for a 5-year, which was the highest salary of the day.
No doubt, because at that time, in the early 50s, the minimum salary of the NHL was $7,500.
Wow.
So, and my father was earning maybe $4,500, raised a family of 8. So I thought that $20,000 was good. And after all, I had the passion for this great game for the team. I'll be honest with you, just wearing the Canadian uniform probably would have played for nothing.
Agreed, concurred. Mr. Béliveau, they say that behind every great man there's a great woman. And I'm not just saying this because we're on air. Mrs. Béliveau is a class act. I can see why you married Mrs. Béliveau.
She's a very strong lady.
Yes, she is, and she's very
hard workers.
Yes.
You see us at the game. She really enjoyed the game, but she's been all along the good days and the bad days, or the tougher day.
Right.
So I think the two of us form a good team. We have one daughter, and I have 2 granddaughters who are today 25 and 23. The 23 years old is a nurse at l'Hôtel Dieu, and she works, imagine that, in the burn unit.
God bless her. God bless her.
She never talks about it unless we see in the news, on television, something, and simply say, oh, yes, we have him or her as a patient. So now it's been, it's not easy being a public life.
I'm sure. I just wanted to bring something up. You were born in Trois-Rivières.
Yes, 1931.
Right. And what happens, did you know Mrs. Béliveau then when you were growing up?
No, she's from Quebec City.
Okay.
I met her when I was playing for the Quebec Citadels.
Okay. Are you at liberty to tell us if you're the one that fell in love with her first, or was it her that fell in love with you first?
First of all, it was a blind date.
Was it? Could you tell us about it?
And we went out as a group the first night. Maybe a couple of days later, I call her back, and finally, from one thing to the other, she was not really a hockey fan at the time, but she started to attend the Quebec Citadels game, and after that, the 2 years with the Aces. And finally, when we decide it's about time we moved to Montreal in 1953, because I wanted a decent career.
Right.
And by decent, I mean I didn't want to play for Canadian for 7 or 8 years. I wanted at least 15 years, and I was already 22 years old. And finally, my style, my skating, and my playmaking, allow me to play until I was 40, so I could have a career 18 full year. So, and we moved in a little apartment at the end of Côte des Neiges for 2 years before Butch Bouchard brought me to Longueuil and showed me a house that was for sale. And we stayed 51 years in that house, and 2 years ago we sold it. We moved in a condo again in Longueuil, and this condo has a view of Montreal, and just east of Jacques-Cartier Bridge. It probably has the most beautiful view of Montreal.
I'm sure it does, Mr. Béliveau. Mr. Béliveau, in your third year in the league, you picked up the Art Ross Trophy. What did that mean for you, picking up the said trophy?
Well, there's no doubt that's a kind of confirmation that you must have not only a good year, but that you must, because, you know, points for me are only numbers. And to me, today, numbers is only a motivation for others to join or attain, and hope that that's going to help them to make a good career, have a good career, and but there's no doubt in 1956 was a great year for me. You know, my first 2 years, it's like any young players coming out of the junior.
Mm-hmm.
The step between the junior and the NHL is pretty high,
mm-hmm.
and it takes a year or two to get adjusted to that style if you have the ability, the talent to adjust. I've seen so many good young players who did great in a junior but had a tough time in the NHL.
Mr. Béliveau, hold that thought, please. I hate doing this to you. I'm being flagged here that we need to take a break. Folks, more with Canada's greatest living sports legend and ambassador to the world, Mr. Jean Béliveau, when we come back here on the VIP Business Talk Show.
An indispensable resource of useful information. You are listening to the VIP Business Talk Show on AM 940, Montreal's greatest hits.
And we're back, folks, here on the VIP Business Talk Show with our very, very VIP guest this week, Canada's greatest living sports legend and ambassador to the world, Mr. Jean Béliveau. Mr. Béliveau, welcome back.
Thank you.
Thank you. You were telling us about the Art Ross Trophy, and also you were the first player ever to be awarded the Conn Smythe Trophy.
Yes, in 1965.
My God, I mean, you must have been in super shape then, right?
Well, I started, in 1953, the fall of 53.
Uh-huh.
So 12 years later, so I must have been in my 30s.
Right.
And I had a great playoff. You know, there were 2 rounds at that time. And I think in the finals, against 65, we played Chicago, or is it Chicago? Chicago or Detroit.
Right.
And I think I had, in one of the final round anyway, I don't know if it's exactly 1965, but I had 7 goals during the finals. But I don't know if it's 65, 66, no. 65 we played Chicago, 66 we played Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
So now it turned out, and don't forget that one of my greatest joy, don't get me wrong, all those Stanley Cups, all the effort, all the hard work, practices, traveling, brings you great joy and satisfaction. But on a personal basis,
yes,
all through this career, it's when my teammates vote me captain in 1961. I was not even an assistant or an alternate captain. And it was a shock, a surprise, when Tobley came out of his little room after the vote, and he shook my hand and he said, "Boys, here's your new captain."
Wow.
Fell off my chair. I never expected it, but what a great joy to take that responsibility. And I suppose coming from your peers, there's nothing nicer.
Right, right. Very heartfelt. Mr. Béliveau, help me out here. I just want to make sure that I get my facts straight. Now, you played for, excuse me, you played for an entire 20 seasons, and in those 20 seasons, you were captain for how many? 10 years. And during those 10 years, you won the Stanley Cup 10 times.
No, as a captain, 5 times. And I was part of the team in the late 50s who won 5 cups in a row.
Right, but les Canadiens won the Stanley Cup 10 times.
Oh, yes.
In those 20 seasons.
Oh, yes, I have.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God, the heydays, the heydays.
And my first 2 years,
right,
in spring of 54 or 55, we lost to Detroit both times in overtime. And one of those overtime was in 7 games, and in 1955 was in overtime. So my first 2 years, you can imagine, after making the Canadian, what you're dreaming is the Stanley Cup, and being so close. So you can imagine in '56, the first of the 5 Stanley Cup, how happy I was and how happy every member of the team were.
Let me tell you, we were all glued to those black and white wooden box TVs that kids nowadays couldn't even imagine what value that had. And by the way, I just want to express a personal comment. I mean, as tall and, husky as you were a gentleman. You avoided fights at all costs. I mean, mind you, you had John Ferguson that would take care of the Canadiens at the time, right?
Well, Ferguson joined us. Here, what happened. After the 5th Stanley Cup, Maurice Richard retired in the fall of 1960. And in 61, 2, 3, I think Canadian was physically manhandled by the opponent.
Right.
And that's when Mr. Selke went to get John Ferguson,
right,
Ted Harris from the Cleveland Barons. And those 2 guys, Fergie could fight, everybody knows that, and Ted Harris on defense could deliver a very good body check. And after that, you had the deal with the New York Rangers that brought Lou Fontinato. And there were an exchange of Goulet, Plante, and Gump Worsley.
Yeah, Gump Worsley.
Marshall, Phil Goyette, I believe. So, and in 1965, I don't mean to say that it was strictly because those tougher guys came in, but in 1965, we started to win again. In 65, 66, we lost to Toronto in 1967, and I always thought that we had a better team, but 2 fellows in the net, Terry Sachak and Johnny Bauer, were just outstanding. They really beat us. And again, in 68, 69, we beat St. Louis twice for the Stanley Cup. I have a chapter in my book on that team. If we had won the 1967, that would have been another 5 in a row.
Right.
By a group of athletes, by a group of men working together towards that goal, which was every spring the Stanley Cup. But I think we had better talented players in the late 50s than this group in 1965 to 70.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I thought that they deserve a chapter in my book, because they were a lot of hard working, and which leaves so close to repeat what great players have done in the late 50s.
Right. Mr. Béliveau, I just wanted my folks to know, I mean, this is probably old news for most of them that do follow hockey. You were inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame in 1972. And I just want to know, can you talk to us about your book right now? Let's try and shy away from the, because this is interesting. I mean, you're making me so relaxed and bringing me back a blast from the past, because you're bringing me back in my childhood days, if you don't mind me saying this. And as they say in English, ça fait plaisir.
Yeah.
Au cœur.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Béliveau, could you talk to us about your book, please?
Well, I was still working for the Canadian in 1986 as Vice President Communication, Public Affairs.
Mm-hmm.
And there's two guys who came to see the Canadian, came to see me, and wrote a book called Lions in Winter. So I spent hours with them trying to get to give them all the information they needed on the Canadian.
Mm-hmm.
Those guys are Chris Goyens and Alan Truitt. And after we finished that book, as a matter of fact, it's probably one of the best books on the history of the Canadian. They said, Jean, why don't you get involved? We know so much on you, and I know. He said they know. They say we know there's so many other things that you never maybe mentioned. So I decided there's a lot of work getting involved in a book. But I was thinking of my family. I was thinking of my daughter. I was thinking of my two granddaughters,
mm-hmm.
and those that gonna follow, I'm sure. I said that would be a great item in their hand to have those books. So that's when I got involved, and I got involved again but it's a lot of work. Now I think I'm a little too old to get involved. It needs a lot of taping. It needs a lot of traveling, and I don't know if I'm ready to get involved in another one.
Mr. Béliveau, hold that thought. We're going to be taking a short break. When we come back, I need to tease you about why you refused the position of Governor General of Canada in 1994.
Yes.
Folks, more when we come back with the hockey's legend, Mr. Jean Béliveau, here on the VIP Business Talk Show. Please stay tuned. We'll be right back.
An indispensable resource of useful information. You are listening to the VIP Business Talk Show on AM 940, Montreal's greatest hits.
And welcome back, folks, here on the VIP Business Talk Show. This is your host, Don EMILIO ZINNO, where we're having a very unique VIP guest today, Canada's greatest living sports legend and ambassador to the world, Monsieur Jean Béliveau. Monsieur Béliveau.
Yes.
On s'était laissé après des pauses comme quoi que vous... I'm sorry, I'm talking to you in French on an English radio show.
Never.
I'm sorry, because I speak several languages, and once in a while I get confused. Mr. Béliveau, you were offered the position of Governor General of Canada in 1994. You turned down the position. Why is this?
Well, in 1989... we had a tragedy in the family.
Sorry to hear that.
My daughter became a widow at 32.
Sorry to hear that.
And those two little girls were maybe 5 or 6 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So had not only me but the family to take a decision. You know, it would have been nice. Rest assured that I would have tried to represent every people in this country well, doing things the way I thought it should be done.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, what are we going to do? Are we going to leave my daughter, who's a widow with 2 little girls,
Mm-hmm.
behind? Because Ottawa is not far, but just the same, it's not like being together in Longueuil. So I finally told Mr. Chrétien, I said, Mr. Chrétien, that position probably I would have taken.
Mm-hmm.
My wife was ready. But I said, I have this situation. If I leave the family behind, I said, I won't feel good. Right now, you know, you don't replace a father, but there's a lot of things that grandparents can do.
Agreed, concurred.
And so I turned it down. I went to Ottawa. I had dinner on Sussex Road in Ottawa with Mr. Chrétien and Madame. And that's when we took the final decision. But I didn't want to put too much emphasis on the fact that I am refusing this offer because of her situation, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of cut between the two.
Right.
And you have to find a way to do it smoothly. In the 80s, on 2 occasions, I received an invitation to join the Senate. And I turned it down. My answer at the time was, I've never been in politics. I always kept my time, my energy, because my employer will give me the time and the means and the facility to work with association which involves small children.
Right.
So my answer was, if I ever decide to go in politics, I would like to be elected.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not the way it's done, and it was one of the reasons that I said no to that again, amongst other reasons.
Mm-hmm.
So those were
very valid reasons, Mr. Béliveau. Mr. Béliveau, I don't want to sound as if I'm throwing flowers at you. I think, you're a very, very modest man. And the reasons why you're loved all over the world is because you played hockey for the love of the sport. Yeah. You got involved in business because of your belief system. You are the epitome of truth, of business ethics, of sincerity, because a lot of people in sports nowadays do it for the money. No kidding. They get millions of dollars. Yeah. And you are truly, truly a family man. And I saw it in when speaking to Mrs. Béliveau. Yeah. I mean, for a marriage to have lasted that long tells me a thing or two about you and Mrs. Béliveau and what you've lived. So, the French Canadians don't call you Le Gros Bill for nothing. They say you're a French folk hero. As far as I'm concerned, you're a world folk hero. Doesn't matter what religion, what nationality, you are a hero. You are someone that's going to be remembered for hundreds of years to come. And I'm not saying this because I want to know. You were telling me off air that they're doing a documentary on you. And I'd like to see during your lifetime, because, you're a very young person nonetheless, and I'd like to see them do a film, just like they did for Rocket Richard. Yeah.
Well, I know that they've been working on it for too long of a time. Me, I like to, when I get involved in something, you do it because the following day or the following week, there's something else. There's some approach made to you, But this has been going on for several years, and I hope, like you said, that I'll have a chance that when they have the premiere of this documentary, have a chance to still be here. Still young, but I'm going to be 78 in August. So times fly, especially if you've been busy all your life.
Incidentally, 78 is very, very young, and I wanted to ask you a question. Did you ever meet a guy from on the French side, André Beauchamp?
Yes.
Well, he's an acquaintance of mine, André Beauchamp.
Is he the brother of Jacques?
Yeah, Jacques Beauchamp, right. Actually, I interviewed André Beauchamp on the show about a year and a half ago.
Oh, yes.
He's with Télévision Laval, TVRL.
Okay.
And, you know, I speak to him every once in a while, and he's about your age, and he's still hanging in there, and he still tells me once in a while that he wants to beat me up, you know, and I wouldn't fight him, not even at 78, because he's an ex-boxer, as you know.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to know if you knew him.
Oh, yes. Say hello to him when you talk to him.
Well, I'll make him hear this interview, and he's going to be very impressed, I'm sure. Mr. Béliveau, tell us, you know what? I'm going to try, believe me, I mean, this is no reflection on you. I'm going to try and connect with my showbiz people to see if there's a movie up in, you know, we're in the works, because honestly, and my listeners couldn't agree with me more, I think, that there has to be a movie done, and I'd like to see a movie done on your life during your lifetime and not 100 years from now when you're no longer here.
Well, they better start soon.
Yeah, okay, no problem. But something tells me you're going to be around for a long time. One last question.
Yeah.
What is your opinion of hockey today vis-a-vis hockey in the yesteryears?
Well, today the average size, how tall and their weight is much bigger than in my time. You could count on your hand the guy who were over 6 feet. Moose Vasco in Chicago, maybe Alan Stanley at 6'1", 6'2" in Toronto, Eddie Litzberger, who played for Canadian, at 6'3", 6'4". But most of them were around 5'10", 5'11", and smaller.
Right.
Today, hockey is very fast. Very fast. You better be a pretty good skater if you want to make the NHL. If you don't skate today, you'll be behind the play all the time, and I don't think there's too many coaches who really enjoy players following the plays. I find it very interesting. There's great hockey players. Last night I watched the game. There's no doubt that Crosby and Malkin and on that Fleury in the net for Pittsburgh. I think Cam Ward in the net for Carolina is a fine goalie, fine hockey player. There's great hockey player. And you see me at the game, and I'm very fortunate in a way to be able to attend all the game if I want, because my wife likes it. From when I met her, she didn't know anything about it, to today, she really enjoys going to the game. We have a little lounge in the Bell Center. We have an alumni, well run by Régent Hull, very well run by him, and support by all of us. So I enjoy. I see some good play. I see some bad play too.
Right.
And maybe the fact that my life has been in hockey, that I see things that maybe most of the fans don't catch it on the ice. So I follow I follow the Canadian pretty close.
Right. Mr. Béliveau, hold that thought. I'm being flagged here that we're going to take a last break here. And then when we come back, it's wrap-up time with Canada's greatest living sports legend and ambassador to the world, Monsieur Jean Béliveau. Mr. Béliveau, please stay on the line with us. Folks, we'll be right back in just a few moments.
An indispensable resource of useful information. You are listening to the VIP Business Talk Show on AM 940, Montreal's greatest hits.
And welcome back, folks, here on the wrap-up time here on the VIP Business Talk Show. This is Don Emilio Zino, your host. And, of course, as you've been, for those of you who've been listening to the last half hour, we have Canada's greatest living sports legend and ambassador to the world, Mr. Jean Béliveau. Mr. Béliveau, welcome back here on the VIP Business Talk Show.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, we're having, and on and on. I could be here for hours and listening to you talk about your career, your family, what you've done. But I want you to know, and for those people just tuning in, what you've done for people in general. I think you have touched people's hearts. You are an inspiration on every aspect. I know that business people look up to you. I know that kids nowadays look up to you. As a matter of fact, my own kids, who incidentally are related to Matthew Lombardi from the Phoenix Players, they're cousins with my kids.
Oh, yes.
Yes, Matthew Lombardi, who's, been playing hockey now for the last couple of years. And they said, "Oh, Daddy, can we come to the studio and shake hands with Mr. Béliveau?" I says, "I wish I myself could do that right now. But unfortunately, Mr. Béliveau is in very high demand, and he doesn't do live interviews anymore. So I had to take what came to me. And I want to thank you once again on behalf of AM 940, Montreal's greatest hit stations, and its devoted listeners. Mr. Béliveau, as a businessman, what would you wish for Canada to do to better itself in the eyes of business people and business in general? As an ambassador to us, what would you recommend?
Well, from the business world, I think some of those large companies are doing quite a bit. Financially.
Mm-hmm.
There's no doubt that every sport need a direction. And you have the team sport and you have the individual, but everyone needs a good coach. And if I be involved in one of those federations, I certainly will be looking for the good trainers, the good coaches that can not only change line but teach a little bit. And I've always said, when I was in action, my second career with the Canadian,
mm-hmm.
I received so many phone calls, and most of them came from the mothers. You have a 15-year-old who is drafted midget, and because he's drafted, let's say, in the first round, he thinks he's in the NHL. But, this drafting there, it's a kind of an indication to the parents is the kid has all the tools, the ability to make a career in professional sport. If he's drafted in the first round, let's say as a midget, and after that as a junior, and after that by the NHL when they reach 18, it certainly must be helping parents to have a better idea on the quality of their son. Because I have seen too many, as a midget, 15 or 16-year-old, because they've been drafted early, they think they're going to go to the NHL, quit school, and unfortunately, if they are drafted junior, it's good. But again, if they don't go to school, so to summarize, I have told mothers, I know it's not easy to do both.
Right.
But try to keep the boys in school. And when he's going to be drafted by the NHL, he'll have a choice.
Well said, Mr. Béliveau. And I hate doing this, especially to a hockey legend like you, but I'm being flagged that this is all the time that we have here on the VIP Business Talk Show. From all of us, from Canada all the way down to this radio station, and personally myself, Don Emilio Zino, and the VIP Business Talk Show, un gros merci for having accepted this generous interview from us. I want to wish you lots of health, wealth, prosperity, all the best to you and your family. Thank you for being here, and may God bless you, Mr. Béliveau.
Well, thank you to you and your station allowing me to talk to your listener.
Thank you very much. Folks, we'll be back here next week on the same time every Tuesday night, 7 p.m., and God bless you too. Thank you for listening.
The VIP Business Talk Show with Don Emilio Zino can be heard Tuesday nights at 7 on AM 940, Montreal's greatest hits.
This is AM 940, Montreal's greatest hits.